Ladies, gentlemen, and haradrim of all ages, with the season now being out for a solid week and a half, and especially with the upcoming 1.4.1 patch looking to shift things a little bit in a positive direction, we could well be closing in on a turning point for some players. Not in enjoyment of the game necessarily, but literally turning to other classes. With the speed of hitting level 100 in the game, and the rapidity of the endgame in general this season, if you aren't someone who gets a thrill from chasing that perfect build, getting Masterworking done completely 12 out of 12, or someone who just enjoys the challenging aspect of pushing higher pit tiers just for the sake of it, you may be considering alternate ways to play the game, if you still want to keep playing. Especially as this season, most classes play quite a bit differently than they have in the past. Maybe you want to see what's going on with Necro now that minions are absolutely busted. Maybe it's time to finally try a Druid. Either way, your first step is going to be leveling once again. And while this may seem to be a daunting task, it has once again just never been easier or quicker than it is right now in Season 4. So quite simply, today is going to be about the best method, tricks, and tips to get yourself set up to level 100 effectively on an alternate character as soon as possible. And this season, it can happen in just a matter of hours. Starting off with a big tip before even beginning: if you have any uber uniques in your possession that can be equipped on your new level 1 character, as in if they do match the slots, these only have a level requirement of 35 once you remove any gems from them, even though they are ancestral items, which normally would have a minimum level requirement of 55. This means you can equip them far earlier than you should be able to have an item power 925 on your character, and the value of this ranges from stupidly high survivability earlier than you should have it with Tyrael's Might to crazy high damage if you had a 925 weapon with something like Doombringer or Grandfather or even Ahavarion. Either way, these will make your journey easier if you have them. Tip number 2, always have on Potion and Incense. The different elixir types have different level requirements, but you want to be using the yellow seasonal elixirs as early as level 10 for 6% increased experience gain, or the blue elixirs at level 50 and above for 8% increase instead. For incense, you can have multiple of these active at a time, but the experience buff only applies once, so it would be a waste to do so. So we simply just want to craft the absolute cheapest incense there is, which you can make relatively easily. This is worth 5% bonus experience, but it can be a bit taxing on materials if you make just an absolute ridiculous amount of them, so whether you actually do this step or not is up to you personally, but it does make it faster, so of course I do have to mention it. With that in mind, let's talk about the actual method that we're using. To start with, you want to enter World Tier 2, and then immediately go to Helltide. In an ideal situation, you have a ton of Baneful Hearts saved up from Helltide on your main character, and even if not, you will often find other players doing this anyways, so head to the Altar of Summoning for the Blood Maidens. If no other players are around, activate it, and players will tend to be shoved into your instance. If you're really struggling to have players show up, just log out and log back in, and you'll be placed in a new instance which probably will have players. Once there are multiple of you here, you will all have the same goal, because everyone in World Tier 2 doing this activity wants to not be in World Tier 2 anymore. So essentially this just creates an illusion of group leveling for solo players, a united goal that gets easier with more players even if you don't have to actively group together. And it absolutely works, because just doing this activity on repeat is extremely potent. If you care purely about experience gain, do this up until the second Helltide ends, and then use the 5-minute break in between before it comes back up again to sort out your gear, to do things like your class quests if you need to, that type of thing. If you are someone who would just be upset to not spend your cinders, leave about 5 minutes before Helltide ends to just go and spend them on the random mystery chests. Once you hit around level 28 for most classes, you can get to World Tier 3, but I wouldn't rush this personally on an alt. Instead, push for around level 35 for your transfer to World Tier 3 and do the Capstone then. The reason for this is at this stage of the season, World Tier 3 is severely underpopulated. People are either still chilling out and leveling early on World Tier 2, or they are in Endgame in World Tier 4, so it is actually still more efficient to do World Tier 2 until you can start to actually equip sacred items, at which point you do want to get yourself a full set of sacreds, the easiest ways to do so being the Purveyor of Curiosities vendor for obols after you change world tiers. It's very good to do this, especially because you'll have been building up obols anyways, and then you can still get a bunch more from Helltide again if you do have the ability to complete it. But I would avoid doing the Blood Maiden specifically, at least until you are in full sacreds, with some legendary aspects applied in this tier. Once you are though, it is again just Blood Maiden over and over again until you are strong enough to do the World Tier 4 Capstone, which you should do as early as you can, and you can easily do it before level 50 this season. And honestly, in a perfect world, you might have a friend who could possibly drag you through the capstones to begin with. You would start in World Tier 4 right from the get-go, which you could even ask for in our community Discord in the description down below. The reason that you would want that is even more so than World Tier 2. If you go to Helltide and start a Blood Maiden event in World Tier 4, people will show up. You might be dying on repeat because you're severely underleveled, but as long as you are quick to respawn, it just doesn't matter, because as long as you are alive, you are gaining experience if things are dying near you. And you're now gaining World Tier 4 multipliers because other people are killing things beside you, because that's essentially what we're doing. We're putting in the material costs, we are spending the materials, Baneful Hearts, which then summons players to come take part in the event because they want the rewards. It's offering value to them without being forcibly grouped. It's creating the concept of group leveling while solo. Once other people are around, you often don't even have to do a whole lot of the hearts yourself. A lot of people will generally contribute 1 or 2 to the actual summon, and generally if you are only putting in 1 heart of your own per summon, you will actually stay around neutral on material costs, which makes this nearly infinite. This works especially well when there is the Whisper objective to kill a Blood Maiden as well, as this basically just guarantees that there will be a constant flow and flood of people showing up to the altar to actually try and kill one, which means that the killing will be taken care of for you very simply and consistently. Not only is this exceptionally fast to level with, but it's also basically full brain off because you aren't participating in the damage. So you just have to focus on living, and more importantly, if you do die, you have to respawn as quickly as possible. Eventually through this you will hit level 55 and be able to equip ancestral gear, and through doing this activity you should actually have quite a fair collection of ancestrals to choose from as you put together your first proper set at this point. You may be able to use some of the gear that's in your stash at this stage, but for the most part, the gear from your main will be locked to level 80 if you got it at level 100. So this is the final stage before you can use any overlapping gear of note that you may have saved up. At this stage, Helltide and Blood Maidens are still silly effective, but Nightmare dungeons are not crazy far behind. So if you want glyph XP, and you probably should want to get at least your main glyphs to level 15, you should probably do some Nightmare dungeons, at least at this stage. The stronger you are, the higher tiers you can push to get your glyph XP done even faster. Otherwise, you want to do Helltide again just until you are strong enough to unlock the pit, and you want to make sure once you are high enough level that you are using the Profane Mind Cage items, which you can send over from your ult, to make sure that the enemies are always at least 10 levels above you just for, maximum XP gain. You want to do this until you are strong enough to unlock the pit, at which point the pit does just become the best source of experience, pure experience for time spent, provided that you are strong enough to just blast through it, just due to the ridiculous enemy density inside and the non-stop nature of the activity, really. One final tip then, and this is actually a reasonably important one, your Masterworking materials are shared across seasonal characters, meaning anything that you have collected on your main character can be used on your ult. You cannot actually do this until you have at least unlocked Masterworking by doing your first pit run on your ult, but this means if your main is like mine, up to the point of comfortable tier 80 pit completions, then if your ult happens to have a particularly good piece of gear, you can just instantly masterwork the hell out of it and make yourself a notably amount stronger at a much earlier stage than that would be normally accomplishable, and this has been quite neat so far too. As well, I should mention that you could even send an item over to your main and have them masterwork it manually, but that's just a whole extra step. That pretty much does it then. Everything that I can think of when it comes to how to efficiently and effectively level a second or further character in Season 4 of Diablo 4, the best methods to use, and specifically tips and tricks that apply to the fact that we are a week and a half into the season, and this won't be your first character. Hopefully you have all enjoyed this then, and let me know your own thoughts in the comments down below. Like if you liked the video, subscribe to the notification bell for more, and most importantly, ladies and gentlemen, until next time, stay sweet.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.